Made it to a Friday. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. We're happy to have you. Jackson, Lucas, and me until 1 o'clock. We'll have Coach Mack in the second hour. We got your phone calls at any point throughout the course of the show. 615-737-1045 is the number if you are so inclined to get involved. We'd be happy to have your participation. You also have the F&M Bank Chat on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch if you would like to interact there. Lucas had high school football last night.
I did. Fun to get the season started last night in Murfreesboro.
How'd that go?
Great game. Shelbyville, congrats to the Golden Eagles for a win. Robert Bailey.
I feel like that had too many syllables in it.
Monster. What, you say it?
Sheville?
Sheville. That is the most proper way to say it. It's funny. We got some tweets, too, last night from the broadcast. We got a couple tweets that said, because I was saying it, I'm trying to meet in the middle, right? I'm not going to say Shelbyville at Siegel tonight, but I'm not going to go all the way to the other end and say Sheville. So I met it in the middle a little bit, and
who's the transplant now?
Throughout the course of the night, was saying Shelbyville. And we got tweets telling me, thank you for saying Shelbyville correctly. We got tweets telling me, hey, man, it's not Shelbyville, it's Shelbyville. So it was all over the place, but they got a big win at Siegel. Robert Bailey, the running back, with a 300-plus yard performance, 3 touchdowns. He was unbelievable last night, and really, really fun start to the season in Murfreesboro. Robert Bailey, our first contender for our high school football hero segment, which we'll pick back up on Tuesday.
Love to hear that. We always like highlighting the high school football standouts, so we'll look forward to getting that back into the mix. We will also talk about the Titans preseason finale. I'm flying to New Orleans tomorrow morning. Any food recommendations, would be happy to take them if you're so inclined, for those of you who've been to New Orleans. I went last year, obviously, for the first time, season opener in the Superdome for the Titans and the Saints. Tannehill had a less than stellar performance, famously, and a 1-point loss. And so I imagine the vibes will be a little different, but starters will play. And I'll have full coverage for you from New Orleans on the Lee Company Countdown to Kickoff with Blaine Bishop, Brad Hopkins, and Kayla Anderson. So we're looking forward to that. You have more high school football tonight, yes?
More high school football tonight. Page hosting Giles County. We'll be on My TV 30. Josh Corey will join me on the broadcast. Titans marketing guru, the husband of Titans Amy. Love working with Josh. And Will Bowling and Brad Hopkins are going to the Battle of Franklin tonight between Centennial and Franklin. You can hear that game right here on The Zone. Always a fantastic environment when that Williamson County matchup takes place. So I'm never ready for the start of high school football season. It always sneaks up on me, but I'm glad it's here. The weather was incredible last night. It will be all weekend, and always excited to get back under the Friday night lights.
So there were Thursday night lights in the NFL. We had a couple of NFL preseason games take place. I assume you saw neither of them. And talking to Lucas, of course, I imagine the audience saw a little bit of it. Prime Video. Jackson, did you watch any of the preseason games last night?
Yeah, I went to Neighbors in the Gulch and they had it on.
Okay, so they had the Colts-Bengals game on.
Yes.
Did they have the sound of Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit on?
I didn't hear the sound.
I came home and there was a rerun of the game on YouTube TV at like 11 o'clock last night. So I sat and I watched one of the Colts touchdown drives with Anthony Richardson to the dulcet tones of Al Michaels.
No, I asked that because the dulcet tones of Al Michaels were not coming through my Prime subscription. Like there was crowd noise, there was the quarterback mic, there was all the things that sound like a football broadcast, except for the football commentators coming through the audio. And like, apparently it wasn't for everybody, but I tweeted and a couple of people responded that they were also not hearing the actual commentators. So it was basically like me watching all 22 with crowd noise last night on the Prime broadcast. So I don't know if that was like for a lot of people or for some of the people, or if I need to get a new TV or what's going on.
Someone hit the wrong button.
I guess it was probably me if I had to guess, operator error. But either way, Anthony Richardson is where we'll start because AFC South, and we've got a quarterback in question here in Tennessee. The Indianapolis Colts have a quarterback in question in Indianapolis, and a lot of this stuff is going to determine what ultimately happens with the AFC South this year. We're going to do, for the first time, I've come around on the idea of schedule predictions and Super Bowl picks and those kind of things. Not that we're going to pick every game, but I do think it's still fun for us to, put something down on paper, say, all right, who's going to win the AFC South? Who's going to win the AFC? Who's going to be the competitors in the Super Bowl? And then perhaps we'll even make Super Bowl picks before week one. But very curious, me personally, about Anthony Richardson. Now, preseason football is not where I'm going to learn a ton about Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen's offense, because if I'm Shane Steichen, I'm not showing you bleep. I had a whole year last year with Gardner Minshew. That offense is going to look one particular way. With Anthony Richardson, it's going to look very, very different. But even for him in a preseason game, what you're looking to your quarterback for in a preseason game is what? Just stability.
Yeah, the operation.
And it was a roller coaster ride the entire way. And it has been a roller coaster ride the entire way for Anthony Richardson, apparently not just in the preseason games, but in reports coming out of Colts training camp practice as well. Now, does that mean that the Colts are trash and that the Colts are going to finish fourth and the Titans will be able to sweep the Indianapolis Colts this year?
Titans fans say, yes, please.
Sure. And you, by the way, you have had ownership over the Indianapolis Colts for a little while. I know they've gotten back into the mix in the last couple of years, but still, it has been a good run of the Titans against the Colts, which famously has not been the case throughout the course of that rivalry. And is the biggest rivalry in the AFC South for the Titans the Jags still? Or has Indianapolis kind of filled that role as the most hated team for Titans fans in the division? Because I do feel a lot of animosity from Titans fans for the Colts. The Texans obviously won the division. In Jacksonville, there's obviously a big history.
That's an interesting poll question, because I feel like that changes on a year-to-year, era-to-era basis.
Which is why you asked maybe Tyler Boyd the question about the AFC North, because it doesn't feel consistent, to your point.
Yeah, he said Houston, and a lot of people are going to have Houston circled this year with all the expectations, all the moves that they made. They are the AFC South favorite, and they should be going into this season. But that's one of those questions that I feel like if you poll 100 Titans fans, they'll be all over the place. Everybody will have a different answer for the team in the division that they hate the most. And for most of them, I bet the answer of the team they hate the most would be outside of the division. Steelers, Ravens, an old division rival from the AFC Central. Obviously, the Ravens with all the postseason meetings after the AFC Central era. But it is an interesting, maybe we put it to a poll.
Perhaps we shall. So for Richardson, he looked great on the first drive, right? He comes out, he hits Alec Pierce for an 18-yard completion. He connects on his first 6 pass attempts. He hits A.D. Mitchell, the rookie out of Texas, for a 9-yard catch-and-run touchdown on the opening drive. And then the bad Richardson, if we're doing Jekyll and Hyde, the Hyde part of Richardson popped up. Pick 6 on the second drive. The ball was well behind the tight end. Is it Kylan Granderson or Granson? Kylan Granson, I believe, is the name of the tight end there. And Jordan Battle was able to pick it off. He completed only 2 of his final 8 passing attempts and just kind of looked awkward on some of those misfires. Again, this is not their actual offense. And by the way, he did have a fumble. The Colts did recover, and they ultimately did win the preseason game. So happy for Colts fans or whatever. Like it's a win, I guess. But with Richardson, I'm looking for stability. I'm looking for consistency. In the same way I'm looking at Levis for that, I'm kind of looking at Trevor Lawrence for that. The only one that I really don't have that many questions about is C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic with Levis and Richardson specifically, because as much as we talk about the clean slate thing with Levis on the disadvantages he had last year and the support he has with the coaching staff that has experience in developing quarterbacks this year, we basically call it a rookie year 2.0 in a way for Will Levis. It's similar with Anthony Richardson because he played 4 games last year. And it's the same coaching staff, largely the same team around him. But it feels like rookie year 2.0 for Anthony Richardson because he didn't really get to develop last year as a quarterback. He got training camp in 4 games, and that was it. He couldn't participate. He couldn't even throw with his right arm in the offseason program.
He was throwing with his left, famously.
Back in April, exactly. So kind of similar situation, just a different path to get there for both of those players. Also thrilled that Al Michaels got to call 4 quarters of Logan Woodside quarterbacking last night.
I was shocked to see the 2 of them actually doing that game. Shocked, I tell you. I cannot imagine Al Michaels. And again, I couldn't hear him because my Prime feed wasn't working correctly. But I have to imagine that was one of the more bored Al Michaels appearance in a very long stretch now of 2 years of Al Michaels sounding bored on Thursday Night Football.
Tony on the F&M Bank chat says, since he sat everybody, the Ohio Fire Department played instead. And also, Kirk Herbstreit's travel schedule immediately starts off with a preseason game in Cincinnati, It was in Cincinnati, correct? Or was it at it was at Lucas Oil?
I think it was at Lucas Oil.
It was in Cincinnati.
Oh.
A preseason game in Cincinnati, and then hopping on a plane and flying to Dublin for college game day tomorrow morning before Florida State, Georgia Tech.
No.
Here we go. We do this every year with Kirk Herbstreit, his insane travel schedule, and he's kicking off going from Ohio to Dublin.
Well, he's the only one at Disney that still gets used to the private jet and things like that. So rightfully so. Kirk Herbstreit is one of the hardest working people in our business. So quarterback questions around the AFC South. They're going to continue well into the regular season for Levis, for Richardson, and for Lawrence, even though Lawrence is making $50 million a year. What are you smiling about?
Ricky on the F&M Bank chat called Anthony Richardson IR-15. IR-15 looked good last night, he said.
That's not very nice. That's funny, though.
It's too easy. I mean, it's right there.
Fair enough. All right, coming up next, the McNair documentary. It's been out since Tuesday. We haven't talked about it because we've been at Titans training camp, and there's been a million different things going on. Everybody in the room, or I guess in the two separate rooms that we do this radio show from, everybody in the two rooms that we're doing the radio show from has seen the documentary, yes?
Watched it last night.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to review the Steve McNair documentary. We would also welcome your feedback, Titans fans, 615-737-1045, on what it is that Netflix put together, not just on the murder of Steve McNair, but on the origin story of the legend of Steve McNair, specifically to the Tennessee Titans and Houston Oilers franchise. So we'll talk about that coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Martin Lawnscapes is a great business if you are somebody like me who's let your landscaping go a little bit because, you know, we all get busy. Everybody's busy doing a million different kind of things, whether you're covering Titans training camp, whether you're going to your day job from 9 to 5. Your landscaping can go by the wayside, and Martin Lawnscapes is here to make sure that that is not the case and to keep your property looking right. Lee Martin and his team have been serving Middle Tennessee since 2011 while providing a strong reputation for high quality but affordable services. They offer free estimates and will give you an honest assessment of what it takes to make your project a reality or better options for your space. This is something that I'm getting ready to go through because I've got a couple of different ideas for my yard and my landscaping in general, looking at a couple different drainage options, as a matter of fact, to try and make it look subtle and keep the water from running alongside the foundation of my home, a very essential thing. Hardscapes or lawnscaping, retaining walls, overseeding and aerating, patios, pavers, walkways, they do it all at Martin Lawnscapes, and they are here to help you. So call them today at 615-878-6493. That's 615-878-6493, or visit them online at www.martinlawnscapes.co. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken on this Friday. 615-737-1045 is the number. What'd you think of the McNair documentary on Netflix? It debuted on Tuesday, and we wanted to wait a couple of days. One, since we'd be out at camp for the last couple of days. Two, because we wanted the opportunity to watch it. Three, because we wanted the opportunity for you to watch it, for us to be able to review it. Now, can you do spoiler alerts with a documentary?
Well, here is your spoiler alert. Also, there's not really an alert to spoil because we didn't learn anything new, right?
And this is a story that has been told and documented many, many times over throughout the course of certainly the 15 years since the murder-suicide happened. And again, it's informative. There are things about it that are informative. Learning new things, I wouldn't say necessarily so. Now, you can experience things that you knew about or maybe have heard about in different ways, which was my experience because obviously I was not here in Tennessee during the time of McNair's murder or while he was taking the Titans to the Super Bowl and winning co-MVPs with Peyton Manning and being one of the most successful quarterbacks, the most successful quarterback that this franchise has ever had. It felt to me a bit incomplete, and I don't think that's the documentarian's fault. It sounds like they tried to get a lot of people to speak on the McNair murder. And it sounds like a lot of people, besides Big Daddy Gaddy, who is Steve McNair's best friend from college, Brad Hopkins, our colleague who was very much featured in it, and Jeff Fisher. And they had I forget the name of the reporter from WKRN News 2 at the time. She was reporting for News 2 at the time on the scene. And of course, the detective who investigated the McNair murder. Beyond
and the
that,
PI,
and
Vincent
the PI.
Hill, the former Nashville cop.
And the PI. So with all of that, though, it still felt like there was a lot of pieces missing that would have helped tell a more full version of the story. Because it only ended up being an hour. They didn't do it in two parts like they did with Manti Te'o. And I have to imagine that there's a million different things that they could have or tried to do and just couldn't get enough people involved. For example, McNair's family is not involved in it. Obviously, his wife, his sons, and they have to be so tired of all of this stuff after 15 years and reliving all of the, the personal and the personal tragedy that all of that resulted in, the painful moments that are such a huge part of that story.
Well, the Manti Te'o documentary shed light on a lot of things that we had no idea about.
Because nobody had done the Manti story, right?
Exactly.
He had not spoken publicly. Sounds like he had been waiting for the opportunity to tell this the right way. The fact that they had Renaya Tuiasosopo. The person who catfished Manti Te'o. Kakua, right? Yeah. The fake girlfriend that they had her in the documentary. The moment when she sits down, even the Dr. Phil walk up, right? Like they did that all so dramatically well as a part of the storytelling process. And I enjoyed the McNair documentary. I'd be curious to see how Titans fans feel about it because I know the story. I know all the different pieces and parts of the story. What I don't know is the personal experience of being in Nashville during, one, the time that the Titans got here, the ascent of the Tennessee Titans as a franchise after finally getting here from Houston and the Liberty Bowl and playing at Vandy, and then the Adelphia Coliseum opens, and they go on this crazy home winning streak en route to making the Super Bowl. They beat the Colts, they beat the Jags, and they face the greatest show on turf, right? Kevin Dyson 1 yard short, the whole 9 yards. And so my perspective was, it wasn't even the McNair murder story that awed me. It was Jeff Fisher chronicling and Brad Hopkins chronicling the lead up to it and describing for me as a person in the audience the hype around this thing. I honestly, Lucas, I feel like I have after watching it, and I know it's only an hour, and I know it's a very, very small sample size in 26 years of Tennessee Titans era football, but I have such a greater appreciation for Titans fans today after watching that than I did previously. And I say that because I had no idea what kind of mania was going on around this city. One, when they got the team. Two, when the team started winning at Nissan Stadium, the comeback win that they had in their debut game at Adelphia Coliseum and the home winning streak that they went on afterwards, and how it just became a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the Super Bowl, right? That kind of instantaneous success and how it swept over, at the time, a sleepy town in Nashville. You know, and it's also not lost on me. Jelly Roll talking about this. We're going to play it for Friday Fire later. Did you kind of catch? Did you listen to that Jelly Roll speaking with the Titans?
Yep.
Yesterday, and him kind of describing his dad buying PSLs and how much it meant to the city because they're a family of bartenders. I don't want to take too much from it if you haven't heard it yet, but just kind of resonating what the NFL coming to Nashville meant to the city and that the team was great out of the gates.
Terry on the F&M Bank chat says the thing they missed on the backstory was leaving out McNair's back injury during that 99 season. A large percentage of fans wanted O'Donnell to continue. It was amazing watching 9 silence them. It is fascinating hearing Blaine talk about these things. Him and Zach talked about it in detail a couple of days ago. And just the attitude of Steve coming off the field, the crowd booing the offense, the defense getting ready to run off, and Blaine obviously tells us so much better than me, but Steve walking up to Blaine in the defense and saying, I got him. We're good. And Blaine, what are you talking about? The defense is rolling out on the field. It's like, no, we're good. Just get us the ball back. Get them the ball back. And every time he delivered, just kind of a reminder, because we have discussions about the quarterback position. And Ryan Tannehill, you know, is he the best quarterback in Titans history? Broke a bunch of Steve's single-season records. No, he didn't get to the Super Bowl, but he got to the AFC Championship. And it's just kind of a stark reminder watching that last night. I don't think there ever will be a player more iconic than Steve McNair in the Titans history. Just with the circumstances of the late 90s and early 2000s, obviously the way it ended has something to do with that in terms of the posthumous legend of the player and the person. But truly, I don't think there will ever be a more iconic player for Titans fans that experienced those late 90s, early 2000s moments with Steve McNair.
Iconic is a good word for it because we live in a time where there are famous people, quote unquote, all over the place. You and I have talked about this before, right? You look somebody up on TikTok or Instagram, they've got 3.5 million followers and you never heard of them before, right? We have moved past a point in general, like household name brand equity, where famousness and the iconic stature that you used to associate in the pre-social media world with people, it's been watered down because there's so many people out there making so many different kinds of things and doing so many other different kind of things and being in their own rabbit holes of, okay, this is what I like and nothing else, right? And closing yourself off to other things that may be interesting or people that may be interesting in other fields that you might not necessarily be focused on, whether it's music, whether it's pop culture, whether it's sports. There's always going to be famous people that have that kind of stuff, but we don't really have iconic. I'm trying to look for we don't really have icons like that anymore. You know what I'm saying? That you hold above the rest. And obviously him having passed away and the tragic nature of his passing, I think it's always going to hold a higher, no pun intended, air than anybody else who might come after him because Steve's no longer around, right? And so you give an even greater level of deference to this person because he's now, I mean, he was legendary at the time, but now he's even more legendary because it continues to live on well past his life.
I mean, not to get into this big retrospective deep segment, but I think you're right about that because I don't think we get those larger in life sports figures that are so revered anymore because of the access we have to them, because of how we're able to keep up with their day-to-day lives on social media and sort of that day-to-day realization of they're also just regular people that happen to be incredibly talented and leaders and all of those things. Like Pat Mahomes, right? Like Pat Mahomes would be one of those figures, but everybody knows Pat Mahomes' wife and his life situation. They hear him talk all the time, doing commercials. Steve kept to himself largely and did it on the field. And so that just adds to the legend of Steve McNair. I feel like the less you know about somebody personally, the more the legend kind of grows in your mind.
Pre-social media.
Exactly. And that was the case with Steve McNair. It was also just sad. It was also just sobering to watch. It was compelling the way that they would, flip back and forth. 2009, back to 99, right? Tragedy, back to excitement and hype and the thrill of the Titans coming to Nashville.
I like the way that they told both ends of the story, kind of working towards the middle.
Yeah. No, it was well done, and I figured it would be. And it was nostalgic for a lot of people. It kind of just brought back the Nashville that was, only 15 years ago, the Nashville that a lot of people wish still was, right? And not the version that we have now. So nostalgic, tragic, compelling, and fond memories, all of those things, packed into an hour. It was well done. We were never going to get answers from it. And that's the takeaway people have. Oh, it was incomplete. They didn't solve anything. They were never going to solve anything.
From my standpoint, it's just like to be a Titans fan carried so much weight there. And you can associate it with, of course the fans are gonna gravitate. It's like the Preds going to the Stanley Cup. How many more Preds fans during the Stanley Cup run were there during the Stanley Cup run? When in the years after where they still had a couple of years of success afterward, but when it started to trickle out, it became less of a fad and more, okay, now we're back to the day ones who are going to support you no matter what. The people that are going to show up, whether you're winning or you're losing, you're having home losing streaks or whatever. Like that's. You'll always have core fans and fans that are created during those successful runs that will live on with those core memories. And for me, Lucas, is as a representative of New Nashville, right? The thing that people who have lived here all their lives, hardworking blue collar people, who go beyond just the flashing lights, the neon lights of Broadway and everything else that the rest of the country associates with Broadway. I'm a transplant, right? Or with Nashville. I'm a transplant. I've been here for 9 years. And I worked with Floyd Reese right out of the gates. Worked with Derek Mason right out of the gate. I get B-Hop and Blaine. And Derek Mason is still one of my closest friends, even though I like to make fun of him for being a bald old man at this point in his life. I know these people and I know the story. I remember going back and watching all this stuff on YouTube to try and educate myself before I took a job covering the NFL and covering the Tennessee Titans. But it can't, there's nothing that can replicate the emotions of the time that were generated around McNair, that team, and why that still looms so large over everything this franchise does for the people that are day ones from Middle Tennessee, born and raised, may have had other fan allegiances, Cowboys or Steelers, other national fan bases, Packers, still do. But that this team moving there or moving here at that time took not just sports fandom in this city, but the city itself to a different level. And the process that has now become, Nashville is one of the fastest growing cities in America. It can be easy, I think, the younger that you are, to kind of gloss over history and not take the time to understand, okay, how did this thing that's in front of you now actually got to the place where it is? And I'm certainly guilty of that, not just in this, but in a lot of things in life. But to see that history and to relive a part of it through the storytelling of the documentary, that's the most viscerally that it's hit me. I've heard the podcast series that have been done on the McNair stuff before, but it was always about the McNair. It was always about the TMZ of it, the murder, suicide, the affair, and the multiple women that Steve McNair was seeing at the time, and all the different family elements of it, the stuff that is interesting and the most viscerally hits you the hardest, right? But everything else around it about how Steve McNair got to be that person is as much as anything, because there are Titans fans who are going to love Steve McNair no matter who he was in his personal life or how his end came to pass. And to be able to see news clips from the time, him at Alcorn State, going back and reading Harry Lyles Jr.'s piece on ESPN.com about even before the Titans, right? McNair leading up to it at Alcorn State, and the resonance of an HBCU quarterback and somebody doing it at that position and that way without all the flash, not needing to be the center of attention, because that football team, Jeff Fisher said it in the documentary itself, Brad Hopkins said it in the documentary himself. That team wouldn't have worked if McNair was the kind of quarterback that, wanted to put it all on him. And when he had to, he did. But that team was built a very different style of way. Or a very specific style of way.
And it was different from the Preds run, because the Preds run in 2017, people have been streaming into Nashville for years at that point. And they get here and say, oh, what is this? What's going on? I want to be a part of this. 99, the people that were here, right? And it was their home, and the Titans came to them. It wasn't like in 17 where a lot of people kind of jumped onto this train that was this crazy Preds run. It was still a very different feel, and I think that just brings more nostalgia to it for the people that were here.
I would recommend Jimmy Wyatt's book, Tales from the Titans Sideline. I've read it. It came out in 2004, though, so obviously this was before McNair passed. And again, to read it is one thing, not taking anything away from Jimmy in the book, because the book is excellent. But to see it is another. To have the old news footage and things like that, to have that in front of you is something that I really enjoyed. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to react to the McNair Netflix documentary. Let's go to Max up first.
What's up, boys? How we doing?
Good.
As someone who was there at that moment, I remember exactly where I was, during the Music City Miracle. I was playing a basketball game and everyone was crying and freaking out. It was just a really special time. But I feel like as a local watching the documentary, it felt a bit sadistic. We all knew what we were getting into, how we were going to hurt ourselves, rewatching those Super Bowl clips. It put me in a horrible mood, aside from just how terribly sad the story is. So that was tough, but, it's like a car crash. Didn't really want to look away, so I got to relive that terrible memory. And I thought, last point here, I thought Big Daddy Gaddy had a little bit of weird energy about him at the end there.
I appreciate the call, Max. The Gaddy's role in all of this, where, there are allegations about him taking money from McNair and bad business deals, and is this somebody that Steve should have been involved with and all that kind of stuff. It's a very complicated story. Very complicated story, which is what makes it so compelling. We'll take more of your phone calls on this coming up next, 615-737-1045, because I know a lot of you have thoughts. We'll also get to the SEC stat of the day and Coach Mack in the second hour. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. So we've been reacting to the McNair documentary and kind of giving our perspectives on it. Were you in Birmingham?
Yeah, I was born in Nashville, and we moved in 2005 to Birmingham. So I was a kid, and, I was about 10 when we moved. And so I was in 7th, 8th grade when Steve died. A diehard Titans fan growing up in Birmingham. But so I remember that very distinctly, the day you learned about it, all of those things. But I was young, I was a middle schooler. But yes, I was in Birmingham at that time.
Jackson, were you alive when the Titans went to the Super Bowl?
I was like a month old. I was like exactly a month old.
So you are 2000.
I was December 30th, 99.
Oh, just squeaked by there.
By
literally 24 hours.
Right?
That's insane.
That is pretty crazy.
You're a 90s baby. You'll always have that.
1999, I would have been 6 years old. So what is that? Is that kindergarten 6 years old?
You're only 6 years older than me?
Yeah. That's hurtful.
It was meant to be. How's that shoe feel on the other foot?
That's the first time you've actually gotten me where,
Nice.
where it hurt. Hit me right where my sensitivities are, my vanity. I was in Cairo, Egypt, so I had no concept of Titans football in 1999. So living it and learning it after the fact, because I don't think we moved back to the States. Yeah, I would, ironically enough, we were living in New York in 2001 when 9/11 happened, just outside in Madison, New Jersey. So was stateside by 2001, but obviously by then the Titans Super Bowl run had happened. So watching the McNair documentary for the three of us is an infinitely different experience than it is for a lot of you who lived it, who were in attendance at the stadium. I saw somebody tweeted us, and I want to make sure I read the name correctly. Zach Fee on Twitter tweeted us 15 years ago at the stadium memorial for Steve McNair. My daughter is now 15 and a sophomore at Blackman High School in Murfreesboro. I, like most Titans fans, probably teared up during this documentary. So we would value your feedback on this because we view it and lived it through an entirely different prism than a lot of you. Dylan is in Murfreesboro up next.
Yo, what's up, Buck? Just learning that you were born in Egypt. That kind of threw me off there.
Well, wasn't born in Egypt, but my entire half of the family, my dad's side of the family, lives in Egypt, so we lived there for a little while.
Very cool. Anyway, so my aunt was the office manager at National Sporting Goods, where Mr. Wayne Neely worked.
Yeah.
So I'll be 31 here in two weeks. So I've lived here my whole life, watched that stadium get built from the ground up. Got autographs from Steve McNair through Wayne Neely, and man, it's just crazy to see someone like you knew, and he was at all of our Christmas parties. Was always like very nice, very cordial. Would always help me pick out my new baseball gear and stuff like that anytime I'd go down there. It was crazy to see, but man, just watching Jeff at the end there, just talk about the team and what he said to Steve. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it. I mean, it was a special time. Even as a 7-year-old kid, I mean, the amount of people that were at the parade after we lost the Super Bowl, I'll never forget that, Buck. That was the craziest thing. And I know that spirit is alive and well in the city, and tighten up. Thank y'all.
No, it resonates over everything. I mean, truly to this day, and will continue to do so. We had that conversation about Levis and the marketing stuff and in the social media era, the profile of a Titans quarterback. There's just, you can't ever, everybody else is second to Steve for the impact, the run. I mean, eventually a Titans quarterback will win a Super Bowl. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't ever happen, even though I know some of you guys feel like it may never happen based on how long you've been waiting for a Super Bowl. So maybe we can have that conversation then. But for everything that Steve did, and I still even think that McNair is in a different category because he was here when the team moved here, and that was a huge part of the rocket fuel that has taken Nashville into what is the fastest growing city in America. Jimmy is up next.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Hey, Jimmy.
Hey. Yeah, I was here. I was actually in the stadium for the Music City Miracle, which was great. As far as the documentary goes, you know, they they didn't touch on the fact that, the Titans were vagabonds for 3 years before they made it to Nashville or to the stadium. His death is one of those moments where where you were. I was in the middle of Center Hill Lake when we found out the news. It was July 4th weekend, and it's interesting about where Nashville is today than it was, back in the 90s. These watershed moments that have happened. They renovated Ryman Auditorium, which they were going to tear down, and they didn't. They cleaned up Broadway. They brought in the Titans, and then the Super Bowl thing happened, and here we are today. The whole draft also was a big boom for Nashville and the hockey run. So all good stuff. Love the show, guys, and take care. Thanks.
Thanks so much for the call, Jimmy. We appreciate it. Over and out. Sound like a walkie-talkie was on at the end. Donna is up next.
Yeah, same thing was at the Buffalo game. We're all crazy, but the wildest thing to me is that after they played their away playoff games, we all got a bunch of people, and we thought, we're going to go down to the stadium and watch them bring in the AFC trophy and all this stuff. Well, like 20,000 other people came, and it was insane, and we were freezing, and it just the love you could feel in that stadium for those long-awaited trophies to come in, because we've been waiting so long as a Houston Oiler person, because I came from Houston and followed, them to Nashville. So we lived in Nashville, and we watched all of this success happen. And, of course, we thought we were going to win the Super Bowl and recreate that same thing, pack the stadium and welcome them. And then they lose, and we were heartbroken. But we pick ourselves up in Nashville. We grab our kids out of the school. We go to the parade. Every principal in town said, get your kid out of here. Go see that parade. And we shook hands with Steve McNair in the convertible car, and we all flocked to see Frank Wycheck, and we saw Eddie, and those kids loved it. And people, like you're talking about, you're really young and you're saying, we didn't know all of that. That's why we loved Steve so much, because we always thought we could catch lightning in a bottle again as a Titans fan, because we did that one golden season. Nobody thought we had a chance to do anything. And the way people coalesced around that team, the city of Nashville was never turning back. They were never going to be that dingy little honky-tonk town again. They were going to be bright and shiny like our team. And to this day, I live in Dallas now, and I have a Dallas freaking Cowboys in my backyard, and we pay $5 billion a month to get the Titans on whatever platform they're playing, because my husband and I are going to watch the Titans, because we remember, cliche, the Titans of that time, and we remember Steve McNair, and we remember all those golden boys that brought success, and I think you cannot take that away from the city. They will always remember that football team.
Thank you so much for the call, Donna, and for the perspective. We appreciate it. I was telling Jackson this during the break. So where my mom's side of the family's from is Evansville, Indiana. It's about 2 hours north of here. It's actually closer to Nashville than it is to Indianapolis. And not most of my buddies Colts fans, right? You live in Indiana during the Peyton Manning era, you're probably going to be a Colts fan. But I had a buddy that was a Titans fan. I remember going to his house one time and seeing all the Titans stuff in his room and being like, why? I'm confused, because I didn't have those memories, and his family had been coming to Nashville for years and watching the Titans games and knew everything about Steve McNair and Eddie George and Frank Wycheck. And I think it hits even more viscerally this year, because we're not quite a year removed from Frank's passing. And, now it's Steve and then Frank and not like the vast majority of those guys. You're starting to, everybody's just getting older, right? Everybody's getting older. And so those things start to hit viscerally a little more when you start to relive some of the, glory days of what this franchise was and continues to try and grasp at again, which is what this whole blow the thing up and bring in new coaches and new players and everything else and championship expectations that Amy Adams Strunk has. She wants that because that's what her dad helped bring to the city and how much that has still resonated with her family. So it's it clearly and understandably means so much to so many people. And the unfortunate part of this is you relive the great and also the horror of how the McNair timeline ultimately came to an end. So I just wanted to spend a little time on that today. I really appreciate you guys weighing in. I don't know that we're going to be able to get to everybody's phone calls, but we can get to some more phone calls because there are a lot of you that want to chime in. Coach Dave McGinness is also going to join us, so we'll ask Mac about that as well as what's going on with Titans training camp and heading into preseason game number 3. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It's 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Titans preseason wraps up on Sunday at the New Orleans Saints. Head coach Brian Callahan met with the media after practice and was asked how many roster spots are still up for grabs as they head into New Orleans.
There's probably 4 or 5 real spots up for grabs that are being competed for, and it's pretty standard every year. I think you're always looking. It's always those last 4 to 6 players, depending on position, and so those are the things that we'll be really keyed in on over this last game here and getting ready to make decisions. Again, special teams plays a huge role in all that too.
The Lee Company countdown to kickoff hits the air at 10 a.m. on The Zone. Titans countdown starts at noon for a 1 p.m. kickoff with Mike Keith, Coach Mack, and the rest of the Titans radio crew. In NFL news, Adam Schefter reports that Kansas City Chiefs center Creed Humphrey has agreed to a 4-year deal worth $72 million, $50 million in guaranteed money, making him the highest paid center in NFL history. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour is upon us. We're happy to have you. Thanks for hanging out on this Friday. Congratulations to you. You made it. 615-737-1045 is the number. We have more calls wanting to weigh in on the McNair documentary. We did review that in the first hour. We will continue to mix those calls in throughout the course of the show. Coach Dave McGinness obviously has good reference for all of those things, having been a big part of Coach Jeff Fisher's staff, and Jeff Fisher, of course, heavily featured in that documentary throughout the course of it. So we'll get to more of your phone calls here in just a second. Friday Fire also at the end of the hour. Jackson, do we have things that people can win for Friday Fire? Do we have a giveaway for Friday Fire today? Do you have any idea?
We have 2 tickets to see Dirks Bentley at Bridgestone Arena on September 7th.
Oh, fun. Thanks
to our Window Nation ticket window.
Okay, don't call yet. Don't call yet for that. We'll get to that at 11:45 today, where you need to give us something positive, since the McNair thing is inherently, well, I don't want to say it's inherently negative, because there are a lot of good memories in that for Titans fans too. But of course, the tragedy is what the whole thing is centered around, and that, makes a lot of people relive some very unpleasant moments in time. So how do you want to do this? Because we were scheduled to do some college football headlines here, and I don't really know how to bob and weave between murder documentary calls and college football headlines. What do you want me to do here?
We'll start with some headlines. College football does get underway tomorrow morning, so why don't we get some positivity before we get back to the McNair calls? Because I do want to hear from people.
I do.
Especially folks that were around and, we're not toddlers or children during that time period.
Not us.
Yes. So let's do some college football headlines, shall we, Jackson?
It's time for college football headlines with Lucas Panzica.
So the season kicks off tomorrow morning in Dublin, Ireland. 11 a.m. kickoff. Georgia Tech versus Florida State. College game day will be on the air. Many people will be planted on their couch because college football is back on the television. So, of course, it's an ACC matchup, Florida State and Georgia Tech. Meanwhile, Florida State and the Atlantic Coast Conference are still in the middle of litigation as FSU and the ACC completed a mediation mandated by a Florida judge. This is according to a court filing that was posted on Thursday, as that legal battle between the school and the league it has been a part of for over 3 decades appears like it's going to be just dragged into football season and beyond. Of course, if you don't know, FSU is desperately trying to get out of the grant of rights in the ACC that runs through, off the top of my head, I want to say 2036.
I was going to say 35,
my memory serves.
So, yeah.
Either way, over a decade, the money associated with that grant of rights is significantly lower than what SEC and Big Ten schools are getting. So it's a messy situation with Florida State and the ACC. Florida State's Board of Trustees FSU Board of Trustees versus the ACC was filed back in December. It is one of 4 active cases in 3 states involving the league and 2 of its most high-profile member schools. The other one, of course, is Clemson. Both of them are looking for a way out. The ACC is trying to stand strong. They countersued both schools, saying neither of them have the right to sue, saying they don't have any ground to stand on. And meanwhile, FSU is going to kick off the ACC season against Georgia Tech in Ireland.
Well, and they open up with 2 ACC opponents.
Yep.
They will play Georgia Tech and then Boston College over Labor Day weekend.
Bill O'Brien's Boston College.
Which I keep forgetting. Thank you for that reminder. They are the only ranked team playing in week 0, the number 10 Florida State Seminoles. And they have DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback this year, which is, of course, a change in how this thing is going to look. They have also tried to rebuild their receiving core throughout the course of this. And I'm so curious to see how Mike Norvell keeps this program in contention this year, because I don't think DJ's any kind of sure thing. Remind me, Oregon State last year?
Oregon State last year. And I'll tell you what, if DJ blossoms at FSU this year, the way he did at Oregon State last year, he was really
much
good.
Better than he was at Clemson.
To me, that's an indictment on Dabo Swinney and that Clemson program.
Buddy, I got all kinds of indictments on
sure.
Dabo Swinney if you want them. I mean, Dabo to me is the T-Rex roaring at the Comet that's branded with NIL on it as the Comet screams towards his face.
NIL, portal, you name it. Speaking of the portal, starting quarterback jobs are being named across college football. Texas transfer Malik Murphy has officially been named the starting quarterback at Duke. No surprise, 6'5", 238 pounds. He won both of his starts for Texas last year. Not a transfer, but Miller Moss is the starting quarterback at USC officially, replacing Caleb Williams. He had a fantastic performance in their bowl game last year. Nebraska has unsurprisingly named 5-star freshman Dylan Raiola their starting quarterback for 2024. And fascinating situation here at Boise State. Now, typically, nobody has a reason to care about the starting quarterback situation at Boise State.
I was just getting ready to say, what an interesting way to phrase that.
I understand, but Pete Thamel reported last week that redshirt sophomore quarterback Maddox Madston has won the starting quarterback job at Boise State. Why is that interesting? Because he beat out former 5-star quarterback Malachi Nelson that was recruited to USC to be Caleb Williams' successor. He transferred to Boise State and lost the job at Boise State against a guy that looks like he should be working at Foot Locker. No disrespect to Maddox Madston.
What?
That
is the most disrespectful thing you could have said.
I said no disrespect.
That doesn't negate, put it on the poll right now, does no disrespect before saying something very disrespectful get you off the hook for the level of disrespect? I'm going to say no.
I'm with Lucas on this one. No disrespect. It's pretty fair.
It's like saying with all due respect, right? After you say with all due respect, you can say whatever you want because he said with all due respect.
I'm just going to say this is going to be very disrespectful, but the quarterback for
Boise
State looks like an employee at Foot Locker. By the way, that's also offensive to employees at Foot Locker, of whom we are very grateful for.
Look him up. I'd like to see your reaction in real time. Maddox Madston, or just type Boise State quarterback, whatever you want to do. Again, Malachi Nelson was a 5-star, 6'3", 190-pound quarterback out of California that stayed in his home state to replace Caleb Williams, transferred to Boise, and he loses the job to 5'10", 200-pound quarterback.
What?
Maddox Madston, who is a redshirt sophomore.
Wait a minute.
A 3-star recruit coming out of high school, Maddox Madston from American Fork, Utah.
Oh, no, that is not a college quarterback.
That is a college quarterback.
No, it's not.
And he just beat out Malachi Nelson. So that is why you should be intrigued by the quarterback situation.
What an odd-looking
at
human
Boise
being.
State. Also,
respectfully.
Interesting here as general managers starting to pop up more around college football programs across the country. Alabama has signed their GM, Courtney Morgan, to a 3-year deal with an average annual value of $825,000.
Oh.
Now, Courtney Morgan came to Alabama with Kalen DeBoer. So this is going to be his first season as the general manager of the Alabama football program.
What is that hair for Maddox Madston?
I know. I love it.
I'm very confused.
So just something to note there, as I think we're going to see that more around the world of college football, which is interesting. Also, Iowa has suspended Iowa has suspended Kirk Ferentz, their head coach, and assistant John Boudemayer, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Boudemayer, for the season opener against Illinois State for 2022 recruiting violations. ESPN reports it has to do with the recruitment of their quarterback, Cade McNamara, who transferred over from Michigan.
Who has not been inspiring if you're, I don't know how many people are paying attention to Iowa football reports right now, but it's not looked inspiring in the early going of fall camp.
Yeah, that was a self-imposed penalty. Iowa does have a new OC in place. Brian Ferentz, son of Kirk, is gone. So,
son of Kirk.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Hawkeyes this year. And we already talked about it last week, but the preseason AP All-American first and second teams came out. Ohio State led the way with the most players, 6 combined on both. Tennessee with 1 on each. James Pierce, a first-teamer in the preseason. Cooper Mays, a second-teamer. ESPN, by the way, did a top 100 players of the college football season. James Pierce, number 1.
This is the second time you brought that up.
I brought it up off air with Cosell. I have not brought it up on the air.
Oh, that's right. So that is all very good. Week 0 of college football underway, or will soon be underway tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Central Time, the kickoff between Florida State and Georgia Tech. And then we will be counting down the days until Tennessee takes on Chattanooga in their first game of the season. So, like I mentioned, we're gonna bob and weave here, right? Because we've got a lot of calls on the McNair documentary, and I want to make sure that we get to people about it. So it may seem like we're jumping from one subject to another very rapidly, but I do think that a lot of people have good insight here. Let's go to Keith up next.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Lucas. I just wanted to touch on, just my fandom. It's Steve McNair and that whole team. Man, like, I didn't have a football team. I was only 8 years old at the time. I had moved from Germany. My dad was in the military. I was a military brat living in Clarksville. And when that team came in, it gave me a reason to have a football team. And I'll be a lifer for the rest of my life for what they did. And, the documentary was sad. I'm going to try to keep it positive here. But right after that season, like, a lot of people will feel let down, after a team loses like that. And especially nowadays with, the attention span of a squirrel for most people, people would move on. But that inspired me to stay a fan of this team for the rest of my life. And I just remember being a kid, having all fingers and toes crossed. I'm at the last play, watching it in the living room with my parents, and then getting Madden 2000 after that, and running up my friends with Eddie George and Dyson and McNair. And, I just wanted to touch on my fandom, and that team, Steve McNair and everybody involved, was the reason I'll be a teamer for life. Tighten up, y'all.
Thanks so much for the call, Keith. We appreciate it. I'm certain you're not alone. Let's get one more in here, and we'll continue to take calls on this. Philip is up next, though.
Hey, guys. One of the things, I'll make it short. The one thing that I liked about the documentary, because I've watched other documentaries on other football players and baseball, other sports, is that this documentary was done tastefully and with dignity. They focused more on the life of Steve McNair as a football player. Everything they could have brought in any kind of garbage, any kind of other BS about what happened, the way it went down, but that was very minute, and there was very little brought in. But the rest of the documentary was strictly about the football player and the man that Steve McNair was, and I think that was done very well, and like I said, with dignity and with honor to Steve McNair.
Thanks for the call, Philip. I agree with that perspective, because in order to understand the fall, right, and the way that tragedy came down and why it was so impactful to so many people, you have to first understand who this person was and what he meant to not just this community, but to the NFL landscape and to black quarterbacks and HBCU quarterbacks who he had, who maybe it's like when Rand Carthon got hired as the first black general manager of the Titans. And he said, honestly, I don't necessarily think about it that way, but I think about the way that I represent my family, the people who helped me get there, and that I can hopefully open doors for other people to have great opportunities like this one. Maybe Steve McNair didn't have all of that in his mind at the time, but of course the impact of that is felt for so many other people who could look up at the TV, see Steve McNair doing the things that he is, or doing the things that he was, being co-MVP with Peyton Manning and being like, I can be that guy, or I can try and be like that guy. 615-737-1045 is the number. Coach Dave McGinness of Titans Radio. He'll join us coming up next. Oh, that music is literally music to my ears because it means Coach Dave McGinness is here. It also means it's a Friday. It means there's a football game this weekend. All the good vibes, and all the good vibes are presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, and your Ford Bronco headquarters online at tworiversford.com. Coach Dave McGinness joins us now on 104.5 The Zone, taking in all the sights and sounds of training camp practice, the final week of work for this team in training camp. A preseason finale on tap on Sunday in New Orleans, 1 p.m. the kickoff. You can hear it right here, Titans Radio on 104.5 The Zone. Hey, Mac.
Hey, Buck. How we doing? Hi, Lucas. I'm just doing probably like you guys are. I'm getting organized and getting ready to go to New Orleans, and here we go.
It's got a little more teeth to it, right, Mac? Because the starters are going to play. It's still preseason football, but there are tangible things that can be learned anytime your team takes the field about whether it's depth or starters or coaches or what have you. But there's no set way to orchestrate a team's plan for the preseason, right? It's basically at the head coach's discretion.
It is at the head coach's discretion, and Brian Callahan has said, and he said early on, I mean, he's been very out front and forthright with what he says he's doing with his team this preseason. He wants the starters to play, he said 3-ish series, and I understand that too, because you can't really dictate how the flow of the series are going to go, but he wants them to get some extended time together. And he said especially offensively, with his group, because he's got 2 weeks before the first game, and so that's what he's going to do. And here's the thing that I appreciate with Brian Callahan, and as a coach, I did this, and the players appreciate it. They know what's coming. I did this early on, and so that's the way he's worked in practice all week. And so, yeah, I mean, and there's 5 or 6 spots still up for grabs. But I think just trying to get in sync in the timing as it moves along in the installation of this new offense, he wants to see those starters out there for 3 series.
And so we'll see what New Orleans decides to do, because I would like to see them play against Dennis Allen's starters as well, but unclear, I think, at this point as to whether that will be the case. It is the expectation that the Saints offense is going to at least play in the final preseason game. We'll see about the defense. With that being said, Mac, it has been the last week of training camp. Are they doing any work today, walkthrough type of stuff that you're at?
Yeah, well, yeah, they had a little bit of the stuff they do today, but of course, clearly they'll have meetings tomorrow morning, and they'll have some more film stuff tomorrow morning with meetings, and then load up and get ready to go to New Orleans. So, and what he's trying to do too, and he said this just this last week. Now, it's not a complete game plan week, but he's trying to put in at least the skeleton part of how they're going to meet and the days that they're going to emphasize certain areas, because when you're going through the game plan during the week, what you do is you got first and second down on one day, you've got short yardage goal line one day, you have red zone one day, you have 2 minute, and then you have third down one day. Those types of things, I think he put in place a little bit as far as the way the meeting schedule was going to be this week. So he's getting ramped up. That's what he's doing.
The idea of Will Levis and continuing to progress in his footwork, his mechanics, and how he checks and audibles at the line of scrimmage, because he has the ability to do so within this offense, and how much they're harping on, hey, we are going to give you every possible advantage to help us avoid getting into bad plays and maneuvering around them, and helping you identify what you're supposed to be seeing out there and putting everybody in the best possible position. Beyond that, Mac, like just him managing the offense and playing within the structure of not highly schemed stuff in a preseason game, but within whatever structure of the system he's being asked to play with. I kind of just want to see him be a little bit boring and efficient in this, as opposed to these highlight reel plays that we know he's capable of making. It's everything else that we're still trying to learn about him. Yes?
Yeah, well, efficiency, especially with your offense, if you're moving the chains, it's not boring, it's essential. And the thing that's important is for everybody else to be involved too. And that starts up front. That starts with the center. That starts with the offensive line. Everybody's involved with it. The receivers. That's where Tyler Boyd has been such a huge help as far as he knows this offense, and he knows the nuances and the adjustments, as you're talking about, that you're going to make. Now, when you get into specific game planning, they will have tells, and then they will have checks, and they will have calls depending on what the opponent's defense has shown. But now, and as you said rightly, we don't know what Dennis Allen's going to do, with his defense, and that doesn't matter. What you are talking about, I think, is very important. Just wants to get everybody in sync, and that's why he wants those starters out there, because it's not just the quarterback, as you well know, and our listeners know too. It's everybody else that has to be in lockstep too, so that it works smoothly and efficiently.
Coach Dave McGinness of Titans Radio with us on 104.5 The Zone. We're talking preseason finale. Him and Mike Keith and the rest of the Titans Radio crew on the call. 1 p.m. in New Orleans. You can hear it right here on The Zone.
So, Coach Mack, starters obviously played a little bit in the first preseason game, but how different is just the operation throughout the course of this week and on game day in preseason game number 3 versus preseason game number 1 when we're this close to the opener?
Well, in game number 1, you just started the evaluation of the 90 people that you have in camp. You've been together now. I mean, you guys have all been to practice, and you've seen it. They've gone through the progression. Even like this week, there was more move the field this week. There was more call it, series this week. There was more situational work this week. You start to graduate as you start to move towards the regular season, and so it's different. But the progression of it, and first of all, as I said, there's 5 or 6 spots open. Well, when you started out with 90 guys, when we started, you really didn't know. Thought you had an idea, but you don't know until they get on the grass and they go through a training camp as to how many spots are actually going to be open and what you're looking at. So your approach and also, the eyes that you're looking at them with changes as you move forward, because, the shifting of your roster changes. And that's where we are now. I mean, it's your mindset is always, and the goal is always the same, but the way you view it is always different, because when you start out with 90 after your OTAs, and you get to this point, you should have advanced, a lot, and they have, as far as the things you're trying to implement and also the people that you're trying to implement it with.
Well, we started out, Coach, not necessarily sure who this team's right guard and right tackle would be. Now, it feels like there's an idea of who the starting 5 is on the offensive line, but beyond those players, what do you make of the battle for that first swing tackle position, Coach? Feels like there's a lot of candidates there. Who will you be looking to make an impact there on Sunday?
Well, those guys, there's Jalen Duncan is one of them. He's had his chances, his opportunities. That's one of the positions, Lucas. I'm glad you brought it up that I'm looking at. You not only need a swing tackle, you need a swing guard also. That's important too. So I think that's what they're trying to sort out with this. And to Bill Callahan's credit and the way that they've orchestrated this, you've seen a lot of different combinations throughout not only the games, but you guys have been to the practices too. You've seen the combinations during the practices that they've had trying to sort this out, because in the end, you're probably going to keep, I would think, 9 or 10 offensive linemen. I don't know how they're going to construct the roster, but you're trying to find somebody that's going to be, let's go from number 6, 7, and 8 when you get your game day actives, with the 8th one, if it's an offensive lineman, being a bonus guy that you can have that doesn't have to count, against your active count. And so that's what they're going to be looking for here. And every one of those guys, have had it. There's a lot of names that have had chances. I want somebody to separate themselves, and that's what they're looking for too.
On the other side of the ball, Mac, on defense, and I won't ask you to speak for the Titans coaching staff, nor do I think you would, obviously, but Chance Campbell has done a lot in camp, in preseason games, not just to make the roster, but, from the perspective of some fans, to try and push for a starting spot. Gibbons and Murray are obviously who they're going to roll into the regular season with, but how do you weigh those cost benefit decisions of potentially giving a guy more looks than he had coming in because he's earned that opportunity while still trying to maintain the best 11 on the field, especially at that position?
Well, and that's a good point. I mean, he has earned more opportunities just because of the way he's performed when he's been in there. And the key with guys like this, I mean, I've experienced it throughout, my 3 decades of coaching in this league. With those kind of guys, what you want to see is them do it, in succession. not just be, the flash in the pan, have one great showing and then all of a sudden disappear. Now, he has not done that. He has been a guy that has, anytime he's been put out there, whether it's in practice or when he's been put out there in the ball games, he has shown up. And so that is where those kind of guys start to earn more time, and more trust. Because, remember, I mean, this is a new coaching staff coming in, and some of these guys, had some water in their bucket because they'd played before, but some of them, the coaches, really didn't know. And Campbell has done a nice job for himself because he's been healthy, he's been on the field, and he's been productive. And that weighs a lot right now as we get closer to the regular season.
Coach Dave McGinness of Titans Radio here with us on 104.5 The Zone. His visits presented by Two Rivers Ford. So kind of looking at the rest of the depth chart, Mac, and going off some comments that Brian Callahan made about not necessarily assigning, a number value to, hey, we need X amount of tight ends or X amount of wide receivers here. Just trying to keep the best 53 and understanding that this is an initial 53. We go through this every year, but I do feel like people need an annual reminder that the roster is constantly evolving. And just because it could look a certain kind of way on Tuesday when cut day comes down, I mean, it could look different as soon as Wednesday or Thursday based on how they maneuver the transactions, the waiver order, and things like that.
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, Buck, because that's critical. And you said it exactly right. This is the initial 53. I mean, constantly chumming your roster is something that goes on throughout the year. So your roster is never really set in stone. And again, we all know you've got some players that are going to be there. That's what it's going to be. But the evolution of your roster, I mean, it's an amoeba. It's a constantly evolving, moving thing. And you tag that correctly. This is your initial 53, but it's not going to be there. There is really basically no final 53 because we've experienced all different types of iterations. When you watch rosters evolve, not only with the Titans but throughout the league. So yes, that's very, very important. And I'm glad that you bring up the point. And Brian Callahan, and I think Rand Carthon too, has emphasized this. They're not just checking boxes for positions, like we have to have this many at this position, especially when you get down to, which I feel like are the final 5 or 6 spots. You're going to be keeping guys that you think are the better players, and then figure out a way to make that work with your active roster rather than just saying, we've got this chart up here and we've got to keep X a number of this position, X number of this position, X number of this position. They've all said that's not what they're going to do, and I believe them.
We had Bill Callahan get presented with the Pro Football Writers of America Paul Zimmerman Award for Lifetime Achievement accomplishments this week, Mac. And just if you could speak, because we don't have anybody that's got as much depth to their football knowledge and history as you do around here. Just speaking to the level of contribution that Bill Callahan has made to the game of football across his 45 years of coaching either college or pro.
Yeah, well, Bill Callahan, and we all know what his stripes were coming in here, and it's well deserved, well earned. I've spent a lot of time with him since he's been here. I knew him, before he got here, and his reputation it was well earned and preceded him. Look, Paul Zimmerman, Dr. Z was the guy back in the day, and I can remember being a young coach in this league. Peter King, Dr. Z. I mean, those guys were guys that you trusted and that you had a lot of conversations with. And that award means something. It means something to all the coaches that get it. I know it meant a lot to Bill Callahan. I think Spags, he shared it with Spags. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And to me, that is because, that is, and normally, a lifetime achievement, it just means a career that has spanned time. You have to spend time in the league to be able to be even considered for that kind of award. But it's well deserved. And all you have to do, if you don't know anything about football, is just spend time listening to him teach. He is a master teacher. And that's really essentially what it's all about. And he and I had a long conversation at the beginning of this week, just standing talking before practice started. And, and we both agreed the reason you're in it is to help players get better. And he said, And I told him, some of my stories with some of the guys that have come back and said how much they appreciate the help. And he said, Mac, that's what it's about, is just helping these players get better, because they've got a short time to do it in this league as players. So Bill Callahan, I could not think of any more worthy recipient of that award. And I know this, he appreciated it too, because it means a lot to him.
Coach Mack, have you gotten a chance to watch the Steve McNair documentary on Netflix?
I've not watched it yet. Of course, I had Jeff Fisher at practice, and he told me that he had been involved in it, but I have not had a chance to watch it yet. No.
Well, quick programming announcement while you're here, Coach. Jeff Fisher, we just confirmed, will join us in studio Monday at 11:20.
Okay.
Coach Fisher says hello, Coach Mack.
Well, tell Fish hello. We're still friends.
What are we playing telephone? What are you doing over here?
But I bring that up to ask you, Coach. I know you overlapped a little bit with Steve when you were an assistant coach.
Absolutely.
With the Titans, but you also coached against Coach Fisher and Steve McNair. I'm looking back at the Titans-Cardinals series. They haven't played a ton, but in 1997, there was a Tennessee Oilers win over the Cardinals in which Steve McNair played quarterback. You were the Cardinals defensive coordinator. Coach, you may have to educate us here. That game was on my second birthday, so I'm not going to remember it. But could you?
I can't believe, Lucas, I can't believe you weren't up watching that at 2 years old.
Maybe I was. Maybe it was on. But
maybe it was on.
I'm curious, what was it like to game plan against Steve McNair?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was, the guy was a special player. Special player. Because here was the thing with playing against Mac. He could throw it as deep and as far as his receivers could run. He could run over the biggest person defensively you put in the gap. And he was never, ever, ever out of a ball game. You knew that going in. And you knew playing Jeff Fisher, playing his football team, it was going to be a physical match to begin with. But then you put into the athletic skill and the physicality and really just the mindset of McNair as a quarterback. And the years that I spent with Mac, and then talking to the players that played with him, the biggest compliment that and I think you've heard some of these the guys, his former teammates say, when Mac was in the huddle or when Mac was on the sideline, they always thought they had a chance. Always thought they had a chance, regardless of what was going on in the game. And that was the magnetism that he brought along with his athletic ability. And, Jeff Fisher and Steve McNair and Eddie George and that whole crew that moved the Oilers in here set a really high standard for anything else to follow. But Steve McNair, when you got the belief from your coaches, but also from your teammates that no matter what happens, we can get this done no matter what the circumstances are, that's a huge, huge compliment to any player. And Mac was all of that.
He's the main man, Coach Dave McGinness of Titans Radio. His visits presented by Two Rivers Ford, Titans and the Saints. A road preseason finale for Tennessee, New Orleans, 1 o'clock. You can hear it right here on 104.5 The Zone. Titans countdown an hour beforehand, and we've got you for 2 hours with the Lee Company countdown to kickoff starting down there from NOLA. Mac, look forward to seeing you down there, and safe travels, buddy. Thank you for the time as always.
Absolutely, Buck. Appreciate you guys. See you.
That's the main man, Coach Dave McGinness. He's kind of like our Steve McNair. The show doesn't have a chance until Coach Mac comes on the show and saves the whole 3 hours that we've spent doing today. So Jeff Fisher on Monday, huh?
Jeff Fisher on Monday.
Well, I've threatened the YouTube comments. If I don't get more likes on the YouTube video, I'll cancel Jeff Fisher. So I'm threatening them. It may just be a false threat. It may just be like anything else on the show where I yell at somebody and don't get anything done. But
yeah, you threatened my job a couple weeks ago.
Well, that comes from a real place.
I meant on the YouTube chat.
Oh, well, I'll do it on the air too. 615-737-1045 is the number. Jackson, we have a giveaway coming up next.
We do. It is Dierks Bentley at Bridgestone Arena on September 7th, thanks to our Window Nation ticket window.
All you have to do is call in and give us a little bit of feel good, guys. 615-737-1045. Give us your Friday fire. The thing, whether it's in sports, in your personal life, home life, work life, the thing that gave you a moment of positivity. They are few and far between, and so we should celebrate them, and we will celebrate them even more by giving you Dierks Bentley tickets if you give us the Best Friday Fire coming up next. Welcome back. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. That's right. It's Friday Fire. Jackson, go get my Friday Fire out of the Twitter group. And when you're ready, we will play it. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you give us the best moment of positivity, we will send you to Dierks Bentley. 2 tickets at Bridgestone Arena. Correct, Jackson? Bridgestone Arena is the concert?
Yep.
All right. Bridgestone Arena. We'll get the date from Jackson here in just a second after he gets me what I need. 615-737-1045 is the number. When is the Dierks Bentley concert?
Your needs always come first. It is September 7th.
Lovely. So, the night before the Titans season opener. September the 7th. Saturday, September the 7th. That'll be fun. So, if you want Dierks Bentley tickets, give us your Friday Fire. Mine is Jelly Roll, his visit to the Titans facility. It resonated a little harder because of the Steve McNair documentary and what we're talking about with deep-seated Titans fan roots. This was, where are you starting it from, Jackson?
The beginning.
Well, it's 6 minutes long, so we don't have time for all that. Get me to the point where he says, y'all effed up, all right? And then let me know when you got it. Lucas can give his Friday Fire in the meantime.
My Friday Fire might be the fact that it smells like pesto in the hallways of our level of this building. I love that. My actual Friday Fire is Carlos Lopez, because it has been announced that he, if you don't remember, he was the Spanish voice for Tennessee football. For the one game that they had a Spanish broadcast last season, Carlos Lopez and Fad Reveiz, the former Tennessee kicker who was born in Colombia, grew up in Miami, did the, I want to say, UTEP game last year. The highlights went all over the place. It was electric. We had Carlos on the show. And he was great. His story is incredible about how his family got connected to Tennessee. Tennessee Athletics has just announced that they will have a Spanish-only radio broadcast for every single game in 2024 with Carlos and Fad Reveiz on the microphone. Really good news. So happy for Carlos. That is my Friday Fire. Also, Tennessee gets a commitment from 4-star cornerback Onis Konanbani. Oh, the recruitment momentum continues for Josh Heupel and the Vols.
It's a really good time to be a Tennessee Vol fan, it would seem. We'll get Jackson's Friday Fire here in just a second after he quits fielding your phone calls. Jackson, what is yours?
Mine is Nick Saban, surprisingly. Nick Saban, as he has gone into retirement, is enjoying different things in life, and it's just funny to me. An article was posted earlier this week, and it's talking about now he knows where most of the light switches are in his house and different things like that. He did not know McDonald's took debit or credit cards. He thought it was just a cash establishment. And just Nick Saban adapting to regular people life is so enjoyable for me. And that's my Friday Fire.
The Miss Terry stories have been great.
That's excellent. All right. You ready for the Jelly Roll?
Yes.
Let's go.
Everything I hoped it would be. My name is Jason Jelly Roll D. Ford. I grew up in Antioch, Tennessee. It's kind of right south of Nashville. I was born here my whole life. When the Titans came here in the late 90s, my father took me down to Memphis because that's where the first season was, and we watched the opening game. I think it was against the Oakland Raiders, and it was 140 degrees. It was miserable. I was still fat then, so it sucked really bad. And I'll never forget it because it was something for this city. At this time, this city was smaller than Columbus, Ohio. So as a point of perspective, this was a really small town. So for us to have something, so this was a really, really big deal for the locals. And it was such a big deal, it was kind of like CMA Fest. All my family that were bartenders, if y'all couldn't tell, I grew up with the opposite of something. I think a lot of y'all relate to that. You know what the opposite of something is, don't you? Right? But all of our family were bartenders. So as soon as the Titans came, boy, we knew that Sunday was a money day. And I want y'all to think about that, too, when y'all go on that field Sunday, that y'all's impact is bigger than just on the field. It's happening all around this city. That the vibrations of this are touching people everywhere. That your impact in the city is bigger than just the 65,000 people that come to watch y'all every single week. There are people that are counting on this organization to continue to thrive because it's feeding us. It's feeding this town. I've been coming here ever since my father brought me. We had PSLs in the upper 300 sections the first season it came here. I watched the Music City Miracle from the Juvenile right across the street out the cell window. Never forget, I was cheering and nobody knew why. I had the only cell that could see the Jumbotron. Me and my cellmate, Josh Carter. And we were talking about it then because I remember at the time, he said, "You think you'll ever go to a football game?" I said, "I think they just offered me 40 years. I don't think I'll ever get to see one." God knows I did, though, because later I got to walk in there with my daughter for the first time, just like my father walked in that same stadium with me. And I don't have a bunch of inspiring. I'm not a football guy. I don't know how to scream at y'all and make y'all fired up, but I can tell you that your purpose is so much bigger than on that field. That is just a vessel that God is using to build your platform, and that every little thing you're doing from the front row right here and Will and the OGs of this team all the way to the back and the new coaches is affecting this city.
That's Jelly Roll. There's a longer version of it. And he mentioned us in his post yesterday, being appreciative of the Titans for having him in. He is every bit the person that you see. It's crazy.
He's so good at that.
Well, and because I want to make sure we have time to get to the phone calls, but I do want to say this. Like, you guys know me. You've worked with me long enough. You guys have listened to me long enough. You know that I'm cynical, right? I've got a little bit of an attitude about things just generally. I don't know that I've ever been inspired by one person in my life. I find Jelly Roll to be an inspiration in every sense of the word. And I don't know that I've ever felt that about a human being before. And, I'm lucky to get to call him a friend. We're lucky to have him in this city. We're lucky to have him on the national stage representing Nashville, because the way that he just exudes gratefulness. I think it resonates at every level, no matter who you are or where you've been and how you got there. So really appreciate Jelly Roll and everything that he does. We'll get your phone calls on this for the opportunity to win some Dierks Bentley tickets coming up next. Also in the final hour, what we are looking for from the Titans preseason finale. Stay right there. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Titans preseason wraps up Sunday at the Saints. Head coach Brian Callahan and company said they will play starters in New Orleans. The league company countdown to kickoff hits the air at 10 a.m. on The Zone. Titans countdown starts at noon. 1 p.m. is the kickoff with Mike Keith, Coach Mack, and the rest of the Titans radio crew. In NFL news, Adam Schefter reports that Kansas City Chiefs center Creed Humphrey has agreed to a 4-year deal worth $72 million, $50 million in guaranteed money, making him the highest paid center in NFL history. In college football news, the season gets underway Saturday from Dublin, Ireland. Florida State and Georgia Tech kick it off at 11 a.m. And Tennessee picking up a big recruit in 4-star cornerback Onis Konanbani, pledging to the Vols over Florida State just moments ago. Nashville Soccer Club jumps back into MLS play Saturday, hosting Austin FC in the first league game of the B.J. Callahan era. Kickoff is at 7:30. Zone coverage starts at 7. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour here with us on this Friday. We're happy to have you. I think we're happy to have you. 615-737-1045 is the number. I don't know if I'm happy with Jackson or Lucas, but I'm happy to have you guys here until 1 o'clock. We'll get to your phone calls for some Friday Fire here in just a second. We would be appreciative if you guys got involved at any point today. 615-737-1045 or in the F&M Bank chat, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Like I said, for a opportunity to win a pair of tickets to Dierks Bentley at Bridgestone Arena the night before the Titans season opener in Chicago, September the 7th, 615-737-1045. Give us your Friday Fire. Mine was Jelly Roll. Lucas, yours was, to refresh the audience's memory,
Carlos Lopez, who will be doing Spanish-only radio broadcast for Tennessee football all season long.
And Jackson, you took what off the board?
I took Nick Saban retirement stories.
Just Nick Saban being a normal human being, or as close to a normal human being as Nick Saban has probably ever been in his life.
Nick Saban not having a GA go grab his McDonald's breakfast for him.
His oatmeal cream pies.
Does he still eat those, do you think?
I bet, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't really seem like the type of guy to switch up those sort of routines.
Probably not. We will also get to what we are most looking forward to seeing, or what we most want to see from the Titans starters in New Orleans. Saints starting offense is expected to play, according to reports. I'm reading some news headlines out of New Orleans today. As a matter of fact, I don't know specifically about the defense. I have seen headlines specific to the offense, so something to keep in mind there, depending on who goes against the Titans ones in New Orleans on Sunday. Of course, we'll have coverage for you. The league company countdown to kickoff will start 3 hours before kickoff. You'll have Kayla, Brad, and Blaine here in the studio. I'll be in New Orleans, and I'll join remotely, and we'll get you ready for this game, the final game, before we can actually talk about football of consequence. It is also week 0 in college football. Everybody get excited. There's a football game on tomorrow morning. The wait is finally over. No more Pate pictures from the cornfield. We are back, baby, and we're feeling them. So let's get to some phone calls. For the opportunity to win those Dierks Bentley tickets, let's get with Eric up first.
Hey, guys. Happy Friday. So my Friday Fire, a little bit of positivity for the weekend, is that we finally made it. After the months of cruel heat, which there is cruel heat still going on. It sucks, bring me fall weather. We finally made football season, guys. Friday night lights are back. Football is here tonight. It was here yesterday. We've got college game day on tomorrow, League Corso and the boys. It's just so great. We're a couple weeks from being back at Nissan Stadium. Me, John White, Carter Bush, and the boys going to be rocking over there for the Giants or Jets game. No free shout-outs for the boys, but just wanted to throw that in there. But, guys, we're here. Football's here, and this is a great time. That's my Friday Fire.
Yeah, football. We love to see it. Remember to stay on hold so Jackson can get back in touch with you. Nothing feels better than football season. Life feels like it has meaning during football season. Did you see the the post that went out, and I can't remember which gambling outlet did it, but it was it was either a husband, a boyfriend, or a fiance submitting his 2 weeks notice to his significant other about being a loving and attentive significant other.
About being present for the next 4 months.
He had a whole statement prepared. It was like, I will no longer be available from 10 a.m. to midnight for the following days. Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, any day that there's football, you now have my 2 weeks notice. I thought that was well done. Let's go to Roy up next. Hey, Roy.
But it was
nope, that's my voice.
Boyfriend or a fiance.
Yeah.
Sorry, Roy.
Gotta turn your radio down.
Yeah, that's not how the game is played. We'll see if Marvin can do it any better. Hey, Marvin.
Hey, first-time caller, long-time listener. My Friday Fire is a story about Steve McNair. As I was watching the documentary last night, it evoked a memory from about 25 years ago. I'm a quadriplegic, paralyzed from my neck down, in a wheelchair. And I was having a late lunch with a buddy of mine. I was in my manual wheelchair, so of course I need someone to push me. We had a couple pictures. We're getting ready to leave, and he's like, Marvin, you're not going to believe who's standing behind you. So he turns my chair around, and there's Steve McNair right in front of me. So I said, Steve, would you mind if I come sit with you a moment? He's like, no, that's perfectly fine. So my friend has to go pick his wife up from work. I said, Steve, he'll be back in about 30, 45 minutes. Do you mind if I sit with you? He was such a kind, nice, down-to-earth guy. Not only did he let me sit there with him and ask him questions, he bought me another beer, helped me drink it. Like, he had to hold it to my lips. I direct him. My cell phone had run down. I'm like, Steve, we have to call my mom. We have to call my brother. They're not going to believe I'm sitting here with you. He was just such a great person and a great human. And at that moment, you know, I'm 52 now. I was early 20s. I was at the Music City Miracle game. I attended probably 3 or 4 of the games in 99. And, you know, he made my 21-year-old self feel like I was the most important person in that restaurant. And, yeah, that's my Friday Fire.
Man, that's tough. That's tough to beat, Marvin. What an awesome memory to have and to be able to share. All right. Marvin, get the tickets?
Marvin gets the tickets.
Marvin gets the tickets. All right. Congratulations.
Really cool story.
To Marvin. And thank you for sharing. See, I love this segment because I'm not a positive person, and we need more of that throughout the course of the show, just that general feel good. So we appreciate you guys sharing your Friday Fire submissions. And for everybody who calls in each and every week to give us their moments of positivity, to share that with the audience, I know it inspires a lot of people out there too. All right. So from Friday Fire to the biggest takeaway from Titans training camp. It is now officially over. They have some stuff today. They'll have meetings tomorrow, but training camp, for all intents and purposes, is done. Preseason finale will soon be over with. But from the start of Titans training camp to the end of Titans training camp yesterday, what was the single biggest takeaway that we had as a show? For me, I struggled with this, kind of trying to come up with one specific thing, because every day it feels like we're talking about something different with the offense or something different with the defense, whether players are missing or guys are coming in and out of the lineup. And I came back to the coaching staff as opposed to the team itself, the players themselves. And the biggest takeaway that I have from Titans training camp is I am a believer in the way that they are organizing this team beyond just the offensive philosophy from the head coach or Denard Wilson and, you know, his approach to defense. The teaching, the way that they go about it, the atmosphere that they create for the players that we've seen a night and day difference in. Again, there's been no adversity. They've been in a honeymoon phase. Perhaps it's significantly different by next year's training camp. But I do think generally you have seen why Brian Callahan was prioritized by this organization to be hired and why they were so painstaking in the way that they put together the rest of the staff to support him. So my biggest takeaway from Titans training camp is I'm a believer in the way that they are teaching right now. What the dividends of that will be, we will see. But that's probably been my biggest takeaway of all of the different things that you could grasp at from Titans training camp.
Mine would be that the offense is going to be a work in progress, especially early. That they're not firing on all cylinders in camp, that they weren't enjoying practices. There have been flashes, but that they have the talent, the weapons, and the coaching to hit a groove. And when that happens is what we don't know, but I do feel confident that that process will come to fruition. But I do think it's going to be a process, a work in progress, especially early. Maybe they go ahead and light it up week one, right? And they're consistent quarter to quarter, moving the football, scoring 7 and not 3. But I think it's going to be a work in progress, but with a faith that it is going to find its way because there is so much more reason to believe that it will this year as opposed to the last couple of years.
So we're both kind of, keeping everything at a distance right now. Understandably so, because there's been no proof of concept just yet. But there are reasons to be optimistic, and I certainly would not take that away from Titans fans about what they have maybe not yet seen, but will see once the regular season officially begins. Like I said, it's the first time. Tighten Up Podcast asked me this question the other day, how I feel generally about the season. I told them it's the first time I've been excited to watch them play since 2021, since they signed Julio Jones. And the roller coaster ride that was that season in pursuit of the number 1 seed, and of course the crashing down to earth that was the Bengals playoff game. All right, coming up next, what I want to see from Game 1, where the starters did play, to now Game 3, where the starters will again play, and who needs a big final preseason game to try and make this 53. We'll talk about both those subjects coming up next. Your phone calls are welcome. 615-737-1045 is the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Two Rivers Ford is the South's most trusted Ford dealer. They are also your Ford Bronco headquarters, and they have been serving Middle Tennesseans for over 40 years. I'm a customer because of their award-winning customer service. I love my 2022 Ford Explorer, but the car is just a part of what it is to be a Two Rivers Ford customer. When you go out to visit them in Mount Juliet, you are put in the driver's seat. Nobody makes the car buying process faster, easier, or more fun. And Two Rivers also sells all their non-specialty Ford vehicles, all their new non-specialty Ford vehicles below MSRP. Their non-commissioned sales team does not work on commission, obviously, so there is never any pressure on you to buy a vehicle. They're just there to educate you, inform you, and get you up to speed about all of their great options, whether it's new or certified pre-owned. And of course, the Ford Bronco that so many of you have seen rolling around in the last couple of years. Two Rivers Ford is your Ford Bronco headquarters, and they have any number of Broncos for you to go, check out, learn more about, and test drive. Even if you're not in the market for a vehicle, it's just a fun way to spend an afternoon, if I'm being honest with you. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Your Ford Bronco headquarters is Two Rivers Ford. Preseason game number 3 is on deck. What do we most want to see from Will Levis, from Calvin Ridley, from Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, J.C. Latham, Tavondre Sweat? Less defensive players, less defensive starters going to play for obvious reasons. That's been the case throughout the course of the preseason. No Harold Landry, no Jeff Simmons, no L'Jarius Sneed, no Cheeto Awuzie. Now, Brian Callahan said Arden Key missed practice yesterday with a very, very minor hamstring thing. They didn't say, he was very quick to say, nothing that would cost him any extended period of time, just kind of being precautionary with it. Is the minute hamstring, I don't even want to call it a tweak if it's not a tweak, but whatever they felt necessary to keep him off the practice field yesterday, would that keep you from playing Arden Key on Sunday?
Yes.
I agree.
100%.
So, it's not really the Titans starting defense. It's the Titans starting safeties and starting linebackers and a bunch of other dudes.
So you're looking at Harrell and Weaver starting on the edge.
Which is good. I want to see extended work. Are we assuming that it would be Weaver over Caleb Murphy? I would also assume that it would be Weaver over Caleb Murphy, but I don't know 100% know that. So it will be curious to see how they approach that. And whether, because is Harrell Weaver's backup? Or is Weaver Harrell's backup? Are they going to play one side, I guess is what I'm saying?
It's a lot more about Harrell versus Weaver than Weaver versus Murphy for me.
I don't think that's true. I think that the roster spot is Weaver versus Murphy because Harrell's on the team.
Harold is on the team, yes. But have we seen Murphy work with anything above the 2s and 3s?
No, but I don't think that Harrell is in danger of losing his roster spot to Rashad Weaver.
No, Harrell is on the team.
So
I agree with you.
What's Harrell versus Weaver?
But I don't understand this. To me, Murphy is behind Rashad Weaver in the pecking order firmly. He hasn't played above Weaver in camp once.
I'm not going to take too much from that because, again, his defensive snaps are less important to me than his special teams play if I'm the coaching staff.
Sure.
They both play special teams.
We're not going to pretend to know how good they are.
I'm not even going to try it.
With that unit.
So I will defer to that conversation and say that those two players are infinitely more likely to be competing for a roster spot where Jalen Harrell is on this team in 2024.
More likely, sure, but that's a low bar. We have not really brought up Murphy once.
We haven't brought up Weaver either.
No, and we haven't noticed either one, but Weaver was a draft pick. Weaver, all this stuff about working on his body throughout the course of the offseason. Weaver is a more experienced player. Weaver has been talked about in press conferences, right? Weaver has been watched with the 1s and 2s in practice.
Coaches have been asked about Weaver in press conferences.
But there's a reason they haven't been asked about Murphy.
Maybe so.
So I would be shocked if Rashad Weaver made the roster over Caleb Murphy.
I think you're...
Or if Caleb Murphy made the roster over Rashad Weaver.
We will see. So, what I want to see from game 1, where the starters played, to game 3. Let's start on the defense first, because there will be not a lot of the Titans' defensive starters, but Quandre Diggs, Amani Hooker. We'll see about Jamal Adams and how they might use him, depending on what kind of looks they present. Roger McCreary, Jack Gibbons, and Kenneth Murray, and then Tavondre Sweat. So that's where I want to start. The Niners in that first preseason game did what? They marched right down the field. It was an 11-play drive. They went 75 yards. They scored a rushing touchdown where they got a good extra effort from the offensive line to push past the Titans' defensive line, across the goal line, take the early lead. Now, the Niners ended up losing that game, and the Titans did enough in their 2 offensive possessions with the starting group to make sure that they won that game. But if you had to pick one thing, I don't know how well you remember that Niners series, the initial series, Lucas, because I went back and watched it last night while I was making my notes for this segment. Was there one thing that stood out about how the Niners moved the ball down the field?
Attacking the middle of the defense is what stood out to me. Going over the top, over the middle, specifically open space around the off-ball linebacking core.
There was that, and Kyle Shanahan can, scheme, even if it's not scheme. He can get guys open and allow quarterbacks to capitalize on those wide open windows that he creates within the scope of his offense. But the other thing that stood out to me, Lucas, is something that you don't commonly see a Titans defense surrender, which is running up the spine of the defense. The Niners were running at T'Vondre Sweat, at the middle of the Titans defense. And that is something that Jeff Simmons talked about. That is something that T'Vondre Sweat talked about. And in fact, I asked Jeff Simmons about the experience for T'Vondre Sweat without he and Harold Landry alongside Sweat and how good that could be for him to kind of recognize, all right, here's the things that I'm going to have to do unto myself if I don't have these star caliber players alongside me. This was Jeff earlier this week.
When he first got here, we had a meeting, and it was like, well, we know where they're going to slide to. You better win your one. He said, hell no, they're going to slide to me. And that's the type of confidence that you want from a guy. You know, before the game, he wasn't worried about, oh, you not out there with me. He wanted to go out there and prove to himself that he could be in this league. And I think that's the biggest thing with a young guy like that. Because, like I said, when I came in, it was the same thing. I'm not worried about the next man. And I think with him having that type of mindset right now, it's going to help him in the long run because, like I said, he's a guy who want to be great and is only going to keep going up from here because, like I said, I'm going to push him each and every day.
So that's Jeff Simmons talking about T'Vondre Sweat and kind of him liking the attitude that Sweat brings to it. Callahan also mentioned in that Niners game because, of course, Sweat and the starters didn't play against the Seahawks on Saturday, that Callahan said it was good for Sweat to get out there and see guys who weren't his teammates be able to push him around a little bit, to see big, fast, and strong in another uniform and understand, oh, everybody is just as good basically at this level, and it's going to take you a lot more work to get to the level that we think you can achieve on. And this is a part of that learning process. So that would be the first thing on defense for me. Now, if New Orleans starting offense plays, as it seems is the expectation down there, the Titans starting corners are not, so you'll get more of a sample size of Titans corners, and that gets us to a depth conversation where we're talking about Brian Callahan said, 3 or 4 spots still up for grabs?
4 or 5.
Do we have that audio? Is that what this final roster cut clip is?
There's probably 4 or 5 real spots up for grabs that are being competed for, and it's pretty standard every year. I think you're always looking. It's always those last 4 to 6 players, depending on position, and so those are the things that we'll be really keyed in on over this last game here and getting ready to make decisions. Again, special teams plays a huge role in all that too.
So that's Brian Callahan speaking yesterday at the press conference about roster spots that are legitimately up for grabs, which would include CB5, right? Cornerback 5. Jarvis Brownlee seems like the 4th cornerback off the depth chart. If you go Snead, Awuzie, McCreary as your starting 3, then you get to Brownlee, the 5th round pick out of Louisville. Then you're talking about CB5. So you got Trey Avery, Gabe Judy-Lally, and theoretically Caleb Farley. Though the hour is late for Caleb Farley to do anything of consequence as he practiced in some capacity this week, but without pads.
But how much are they really going to be challenged tonight? Because Saints
Sunday.
wide receiver core, Sunday. Saints wide receiver core is not the best in the league. Chris Olave, let's say they roll out their starters. Right now, that looks like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and A.T. Perry.
It's good enough to give Christian Fulton problems last year.
Fair, yeah. And it's, Aesop Winston gave Trey Avery plenty of problems last week.
It's, if you can hang with a middling team's first team, then I feel okay about you. It's not like Chris Olave is a bad player. I know he's a bit of an inconsistent player. I think that's kind of what they're looking for more, him to just level out in New Orleans, and they are without Michael Thomas, who I think had a big game, if I remember correctly, against the Titans in Week 1 last year.
Did he? Was he part of it? I don't even remember him being a part of that game. All I remember from that game are Ryan Tannehill misses.
Well, I'm pretty sure Michael Thomas had a significant catch. Olave and Michael Thomas had significant catches over Christian Fulton in that game, who dealt with hamstrings.
Olave is a really good player. Alvin Kamara is Alvin Kamara. But, man, if that's not an inspiring offensive lineup in New Orleans.
No. Read that on air, Jackson?
Michael Thomas had 5 catches for 61 yards on 8 targets.
Yeah, he was very much involved in that game, in that Week 1 game. we'll mix some phone calls in here, too. What are you most looking to see from the Titans starters in New Orleans in this preseason finale? They ramp up ahead of the Chicago, September the 8th season opener. Let's go to Joe up next.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Yeah. While you were talking, I just sort of got sick because the last time the Titans went into New Orleans, Ron Tolbert's crew blew the call on the fumble incompletion, the same one that cost the Titans the playoffs the year before. So I still got a sore spot for that one. Really what I called about is walk me off the edge with Levis. After the first game last year, he went 2-6 with 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Not exactly a stellar record. Not exactly something that, we all know it's the quarterback in the NFL, and if your quarterback's not playing well, you might as well just, cash in the season. I mean, Burrow got hurt last year in Cincinnati. They didn't make the playoffs, and Cousins got hurt. They didn't make the playoffs, and Rodgers got hurt. They didn't make the playoffs, and on and on and on. So talk me off the ledge on Levis and give me some confidence, please.
Well, I don't have enough evidence to talk you off the ledge. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my position with Will Levis is this is make it or break it year, and he clearly belongs at the NFL level. But there have been plenty of quarterbacks who have gotten to the league, look like they belong, and have not become anything above that, right? Marcus Mariota looked like he belonged in the NFL and does belong in the NFL, but he's a backup quarterback. Carson Wentz, the same. I don't know what Levis is just yet. What I do know is you bring up the Cincinnati Bengals and then Burrow getting hurt and missing the playoffs. Well, what did they do? Not totally without Joe Burrow, but in a lot of different games without Joe Burrow. They had a 9-8 record in the toughest division in football, and they were able to manufacture an offense around Jake Browning that was sufficient. And you hired those guys. You hired Brian Callahan to come in here. That guy. But you also get his dad, who's the offensive line coach, who is got a top 10 prospect in J.C. Latham to work with. It's less to me, Joe. I would buy Levis stock. Let me say this as far as talking you off the ledge. I would buy Levis stock. Not just because of him, and arguably more because of what they've surrounded him by, because I think that gives him some margin for error. There are going to be some growing pains. He did go 2-6 down the stretch after that Atlanta game. He did the interview with us, not this Thursday, but last Thursday, where he's talking about, I wish people would stop bringing up the Atlanta game so much because I played plenty of games after that, and I'm due for another one.
Well, he wants to have, because that was his best performance.
Sure.
So he wants to have good performances that come in between the present and his first ever start. Because if we're still talking about the Atlanta game as his best performance 3 months from now, then it's an issue.
Yeah. It's about the steps that he's taking with the people who are best equipped to get him there. And I have a degree of confidence in the people that they've hired to get him there. So that gives me a little more confidence without actually knowing anything about Will Levis, other than, he was running for his life back there and he's got a rocket launcher arm. There are signs of progress, signs of growth within the offense that are less noticeable, but are the most important steps for him to take. Mechanics, footwork, processing, all the not sexy stuff that is essential to playing the quarterback position. So let's pivot from the caller's call to the offensive side of the football. Do you have any other questions on defense? Depth corners, run defense. Can they get a pass rush without Arden Key or Harold Landry? Because that also matters. They weren't able to get close to Niners quarterbacks really in that first preseason game where the starters played. So pass rush would also be something to keep an eye on there.
Kicking. I want to see Nick Folk kick.
I want to see them both kick. Give them both to us in a hostile road environment. Nick Folk gets the first opportunities. He missed from 52 this preseason.
52. I think it might have been nicked at the line of scrimmage, kind of tipped on the way. But I would like to see, let's say the Titans get what they want out of their starting offensive group. Let's say 3 series. What would we be talking about? Maybe midway through the second?
Yeah.
When Mason Rudolph comes in?
About as much as they played in the first preseason game.
So let's say Mason Rudolph comes in and the Titans suddenly have a situation where it's 4th and 1 on the 30 or 35. I don't want to see a QB sneak from Mason Rudolph keep the drive going. I want to see Nick Folk kick a field goal in that scenario.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, with the starting offense, you want the operation, you want first downs, you want to end up in the end zone. But beyond that, that's just me personally. If that specific scenario were to pop up, I'd be watching saying, no, let's see Nick Folk get out there and get some work in. Just to confirm, no, he's good, right? We don't have to do the kicker controversy thing.
Well, plenty of people are going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And we have a homegrown example of that. We talked about Stonehouse and Kern, and that Stonehouse was just too good to keep off the field, and that Brett didn't necessarily lose that job. But you have this thing sitting here in training camp, an undrafted rookie free agent that's also significantly less expensive. Now, the money that Nick Folk is making on a one-year deal is not outrageous, right? And he made like 95% of his kicks last year. So unless Nick Folk falls off a cliff, he would be my preference at kicker. But I have no issue with letting them play it out in a preseason game where both of them get some opportunities to hit some field goals. So, from defense to special teams, now to offense, I would like to see Levis check down. I would like to see Levis be mechanically sound. I would like to see Levis not take a hit. I'd like to see him throw it away. Live to see another down. Don't put your body in position to take that, that safety streaking across the middle as you try and run for the end zone inside of the 5-yard line. Like, I get him and the style that he plays. But also, I want to see him learn. I want to see him look more natural within what they're asking him to do. And if that's checking the ball down and finding the running backs in the passing game and distributing the ball that way. And what did Brian Callahan want to see him with a 70% completion percentage in the first preseason game? I'm pretty sure is what Charles Davis said on the broadcast. Yeah, if he's somewhere around 68 to 70% as a passer and he looks mechanically sound doing it, don't need all the big playability. I would be a benefit. It would be, preferable to see something that gets you excited. But the thing that would excite me most as a Titans fan, if Levis managed the offense down the field and route to points, whether it's a field goal, whether it's a touchdown, as long as he manages the situation and doesn't just try to hero mode it down the field.
Yeah, everybody's on the same page there with the starting offense. Beyond the starters, I asked Coach Mack about it. I have no idea who the third tackle on this team is.
Well, now wait. Let's not get ahead of ourselves with third tackle because I'm just talking about quarterback there. I'm not talking about the starting offense. Quarterback, obviously, with the starting offense, but like J.C. Latham, I think is it's worth talking specifics about J.C. Latham rather than third tackle, unless you would like to have that third tackle conversation.
But I know J.C. Latham. You're right. We want to see J.C. Latham be a part of that operation, and he was good in the first preseason game. He was solid in the first preseason game.
Gave himself a C.
A C, yes. But that's just smart by J.C. That's just J.C. Latham being smart. Always grade yourself in the public lower than what most people would perceive it as, because I don't think most people would have given him a C. But beyond that, I just have, it's crazy. I have more questions about the tackle position than the rookie starting at left tackle making that switch for the first time since high school.
Sure.
I have no idea who the third tackle on this team is.
I keep telling you it's Jerron Christian, but you don't seem to want to hear me on that.
Do we know that concretely?
I feel like I do. I mean, Duncan hasn't done anything. Again, from my estimation, based on what we've seen on the field and how they've deployed them in the preseason games and in practice, Jerron Christian is the backup left tackle over Jalen Duncan, though perhaps Duncan could push him there, and perhaps the final preseason game will matter there. But I do think that the answer continues to be Jerron Christian, even if you have more options there than just Jerron Christian. Because Duncan, you look at Duncan and you want it to be him, right? I think most people look at Jalen Duncan and say, why isn't that a starting caliber NFL offensive lineman? But to me, Duncan right now doesn't mean that he can't get better as a football player. Took Dylan Radin's plenty of time, and we're still kind of unclear on him. Jalen Duncan, for me, is one of these players that for now is just like the old cliche, right? Looks good getting off the bus. He's got the size. He's got the measurables that you would look for in an NFL offensive lineman. But I need the mean streak. I need the finish. I need the consistency from Jalen Duncan that I have yet to see from him. So until such time as he shows that quality, I would say that he's still got a lot to do before he can be a legitimate third tackle, before he can be the kind of player that Dennis Kelly was here, where if something happens to your offensive lineman, maybe you don't have 5 quality backups, but you've got one. He can play multiple positions, and maybe he's not the best at any of them. Right now, that's been Brunskill. I'd like to see a better version of Brunskill at the tackle spot, right?
I wonder if Brunskill plays any tackle this year.
I mean, it depends on how hurt they get. He's played all 5.
Yeah, he started there before.
Yeah,
in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Tackle depth is a real concern with this team.
Last call for phone calls. If you got them, we'll talk about who needs a big final preseason game coming up next. There are some candidates that you haven't yet heard from, and we'll update the polls before we get you out of here on a Friday. Last segment of the week. What a time. Heading down to New Orleans. Always a great time. Jackson's scared I'll get too drunk on Bourbon Street on Saturday and not make pregame on Sunday, but don't you worry. There's no bad influences making this trip with me. It's only Tehran and Nick Suss and Jimmy Wyatt because the majority of people don't travel during the preseason.
I'm not worried. Pregame is not my problem.
Whose problem is pregame? I feel
Reed
like there's
Smith.
a different voice in my head every time I do the damn pregame show now.
Reed Smith.
Well,
I will be with Lucas on Titans Talkback. I know he will be there. So, yeah.
I will share my location with Kayla Anderson so that she has my whereabouts ahead of the preseason game, just in case, we decide to do a little bourbon. But in the absence of that, there will be a preseason game, and guys who need to have a big final push in the preseason to make the roster. Can I interest you in Gabe Judy Lally? In fact, the Vol corner, also Vandy corner. Also, where was he before?
BYU. It went Vandy, BYU, Tennessee, Titans.
Okay. Why did I think there was an Oregon stint in there? I'm thinking of a different player, maybe.
The Vols just got Jermod McCoy, who should be Tennessee's number one corner this year, as an Oregon State transfer.
Okay. So, Gabe Judy Lally, Trey Avery. The only thing separating those two players is what? Trey Avery has played a lot of NFL football because the Titans cornerback injury situation has been prevalent. Christian Fulton, Caleb Farley. I mean, how long has Trey Avery been on this roster? I want to say 3 or 4 years at this point.
2020 UDFA.
So a while. With Gabe Judy Lally, he hasn't played a lot of NFL football. In fact, he's played no NFL football beyond the preseason. But Trey Avery
That was a lie. 2022 UDFA.
I was going to say, 2020 feels like a long time.
I lied to you right there.
Okay. Well, it wouldn't be the first time. Can I hear from Gabe Judy Lally on his...
I think I really took it and ran with it. I'll admit at the end of the day, there are rookie moments that happens because this is the first time you're seeing this. But I think for the most part, when I was given the opportunity, I stepped up to the plate and was able to, put my best foot forward. We got the ability to play against some other teams and, practice against some other teams. For the most part, I think it really did hold my own when I was given the opportunity and the ball was thrown my way. I really cherish these moments that I got, and I think that it's given me the opportunity to be proud of what I did.
When those rookie moments do happen, what's the key for you in just rolling over to that next play?
Well, the best way I could put it is like when you use the restroom, you got to flush, right? You can't just leave it in there or it's going to stink the place up. So I just have that, flush the toilet mentality. It happened. I'll see it later on film, but I can't dwell on it in that moment in time because if I do, then it's just going to pile up and, the whole place is going to stink and then coach is going to be upset at the end of the day, and I don't want that happening.
Sounds like you feel pretty confident about the news you're going to get next week.
I think that I've given myself the best opportunity to, be happy with whatever happens at the end of the day. It's a business, and I can't be upset with whatever decision that they make, but I do believe that, the way that I played on this football field has definitely surprised a lot of people. And, I just told myself from the beginning, you got to go out there and prove it every single day. So I think that I gave myself the best opportunity to prove it every day. And I'm going to make mistakes. We're all human, but I think that I was able to build from those mistakes. And usually, once you tell me once, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. So I just pride myself on that. And, whatever does happen, I'm proud of what I did.
So a very, very visual analogy there. Hopefully he's remembering to flush on a regular basis and stuff doesn't pile up, as he said.
Doesn't sound like a UDFA rookie. I don't know. He just sounds like he kind of has a grasp on things.
Well, he's played at three
Played a lot
different
of
college football institutions. He's been around a lot, so he's probably... the media exposure thing is something that it's tough to tell when they come out of college, right? Because you don't know how often these guys are actually put in front of media. But I'd be curious to see how much of a competition there actually is, because Trey Avery has consistently gotten snaps over him, but that doesn't mean that he's a lock to make the roster over Gabe Judy Lally. So we will see. Polls, please.
Yeah. Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. What's the most positive story you've seen in sports this week? Jack says Jelly Roll talking to the Titans yesterday. Mike says Burt getting the Nissan Stadium dirt thanks to Burke.
He called me very excited about the dirt. I think I mentioned this yesterday, and I said, I don't care about your dirt. Get it out of here. And then he ate some of it last night on primetime.
You just don't want to see other people eat, Buck. That's all that is.
Well, I don't want to see the two of you eat because the two of you eating is disgusting.
What do you... Damn, I rarely want to give you credit, but that was good. Because he probably did eat some of that dirt.
He absolutely ate the dirt. And that's less disgusting than watching you eat that beef stroganoff yesterday on air.
It was tasty. What do you need to see from Titan starters on Sunday? Dave says play cohesively. Nike Main on Twitter says for the offense, not one negative play, not one. Defense, force a turnover or a turnover on downs.
Not one negative player.
Not
You're
one.
all cut.
That's right.
Leave them in New Orleans.
Steven just says stay healthy.
Yeah, that's the right answer.
Who needs to have a big performance on Sunday to make the Titans' 53-man roster? Dave says Aiton, the defensive lineman, who had a sack last week, and Weaver. He also says Duncan and some of the other backup tackles.
I have no idea what you just said because Trey Wynn just tagged us in a tweet that says the blue, white shirt, earphones looking like hair. Just saying, first glance, I thought Buck Rising had a very special guest today. It's a side shot of you and Flo from Progressive, and you look like the same person, and it is hilarious to me.
Me?
You. I'm going to send it to the Twitter group. It is delightful.
Yeah, didn't tag me in it. What is your biggest takeaway from Titans training camp?
I want you to do it in your best Flo from Progressive impression.
I don't even know where to begin with that. Nash Sports Fan says that we don't know how much the secondary will play out. I don't know what that really means. We don't know how much the secondary will play out. Or how much starters will play.
Well, why'd you read it if you didn't know what it means?
I'm wrong. The polls are
I'm not paying attention to you anyway. I'm too busy showing the YouTube comments that you look like Flo from Progressive. This is not for you. This is for the YouTube audience.
The polls are as Ron Burgundy as it gets around here. Kenneth says his biggest takeaway is that the offense could be in for a rough start to the season, but will steadily improve. He stole mine.
Okay.
UW says Will Levis and Calvin Ridley not having chemistry is concerning. Jack's biggest takeaway is that Jaquan Jackson's going to break out.
Calvin Ridley and Will Levis, being a work in progress is not unsurprising. It's the best wide receiver that Will Levis has ever played with. It's going to take some time. Jaquan Jackson, Lucas continues to advocate for him as one of the most, if not the most consistent skill position player during camp. And I kind of brushed you off when you initially said that, but I don't want to brush you too far off because he has done a lot of work in that way, to his credit.
I don't see it. I do not look like Flo in that picture.
I think
I would love
exactly
to say I do,
like
but I
Flo
don't. Love Flo, big fan. How do you feel about neutral site college football games? 40% say hate them, 34% say like them only when they're in America, 24% say love them.
Some nationalism around our college football.
I'm sorry. We don't need FSU and Georgia Tech to play in Ireland.
Yeah,
what are we growing the game in Ireland?
I got it last year with Notre Dame. But you know why? Because I don't know if you've noticed these billboards. There are a few of them around town. Ireland, the country of Ireland, is pushing tourism. So they're sponsoring things like neutral site college football games to get tourism over to Ireland. Not a bad strategy.
As a Titans fan, which AFC South team do you hate the most? 62%. Majority are going Colts. 21% Jags. 16% Texans. And those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. That's going to do it for us today. I'll talk to you next from New Orleans. Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy the football game on Sunday, and we'll be back at it, or I'll be back at it Sunday night from New Orleans on A to Z Sports Primetime.